you guys doing today? It is a 3-day weekend. Some of you may have Monday off, which is awesome. Hell yeah. I'm very happy about that. So I'm going to be reading some paranormal stories. These should be good, I hope. And I hope you really enjoy these. Let's get started. The first one is called Ghost or Demon on Tinder Date. A couple of years back, I matched with a girl on Tinder from the same city. She offered that I come over and watch a movie at her place. Everything was going well until she put on the movie. It was weird, I couldn't focus on the movie because it was in black and white. Who would put on a movie in black and white? LOL. All I could think about was how I was going to get her upstairs to her room so we could hook up. Piece of shit, right? LOL. I love how he's calling himself a piece of shit. We were sitting on what I call an L-shaped couch in her living room where we were watching the movie. The edge of the couch where I was sitting was in the corner of the room. Hard to explain, but basically where I was sitting was the corner of the room with only walls behind me. I was being quite patient and didn't push her too much, but there came a point where I had enough and was about to ask her if we can go upstairs. But before I could even move my lips, someone or something yelled into my ear to get out. Sounded like a male and very demonic. Before anyone questions my sanity or if I was under the influence, both are out of question. I've never had this happen to me, and I could feel the vibration on my eardrum from the voice, as if someone cupped their hands and yelled in your ear. Anyway, naturally when this happened, I got up and questioned everything. Did you hear that? Is there anyone else in the house? She claimed she didn't hear anything and sort of smiled at me and played it off that I was nervous. I was starting to get uncomfortable and could feel the energy of the room shifting, and I was genuinely ready to leave without hooking up or anything, until she asked me if I wanted to go upstairs. But I was still stunned and confused and asked her straight up if she has ever encountered anything paranormal in this house. She said no, but then continued to tell me how one of her cousins was murdered, chopped up, and pieces of her were sent to the family, her house being one of them. What the fuck? Wild, right? But that wouldn't explain the male voice I heard because her cousin was a young female. What? Still a little scared and confused. I should have left, but she was pretty and now inviting me to go upstairs to her room. This is where things get really scary for me because I know myself and would never do this, but anyways, when we got to her room, she invited me to take a shower with her. At this point, I knew we were going to hook up and was eager to get it over with and leave. Normally, I would have joined her in the shower, but for some reason, I was still on edge and checking over my shoulder every second like a weirdo. So I told her I would wait for her on her bed. I remember sitting on her bed and just looking around the room. Next thing I know, it's morning. Apparently, I passed out on the bed before she could go back into the room. Very odd. I was waiting to hook up and leave. No intentions of sleeping over at all, and no drugs or alcohol involved. I couldn't remember how I fell asleep. It's incredible. When I woke up in the morning, she acted like nothing happened. She said I was sleeping like a baby, and she didn't want to wake me up. Whatever was there that night was protecting her or didn't want me to fuck her. That sucks, man. Dang. The next one is called I Was Hunted Last Night. Hey guys, my name is Rosalind, and I live in Virginia. I have been raised here my whole life, and I grew up with stories of all sorts of cryptids around here. Last night, however, was different. My husband Charlie and I were out on a drive to his hometown in North Carolina. This place has maybe 2,000 people, if not less, inhabiting, and it's almost an hour from the nearest hospital. Growing up was odd here, he would tell me. He always said that you were never truly alone, but I always thought that it was just the ghosts of the hundreds who have passed roaming I've seen a few shadows here and there, and I can say I've never felt alone, but also I've never felt threatened. This time we were driving there around 10 p.m. There's a spot we like to sit at, and sometimes we need some time away to relax and enjoy each other's company. The drive isn't longer than 2 hours, and we like to take the scenic route around when it's empty. He had mentioned how he knew this road he used to love to sit on, and at the end of it is a cul-de-sac of trees. When we approached, we were both silent, but now I know we were both experiencing the same feeling of, I'm not alone right now. That's when I saw it. Behind the trees, lurking to not be seen, was a tall and gangly figure. I remember feeling petrified, and when I caught its eye, I glanced away. I told him to leave right then and there, and later explained what I had seen. As we continued to drive to his old neighborhood, we continued to feel followed. His street seemed to have a cast of darkness not typical on these nights. We turned to our usual spot and parked. At this point, I described to him what I had seen, and we rolled down the windows to listen. Silence, fleeting crickets, silence. I looked at him and felt that trickling fear of being watched again. We hightailed it out of there and began on our journey home. Both of us at that point realizing we were being hunted down. My husband knows how to take these roads and curves, but I can only imagine what would have happened if he took a curve too tight and we hit a tree. At some point, I glanced out of the window into the dark field next to us, and I saw it running on all fours. Ew. I could feel its anger. I was not supposed to have seen it. At this point, I told my husband, and he maneuvered us to a small little area with civilization, i.e. a hotel, a few fast food places, and a Walmart. He decided oddly to turn into the Walmart and park. Bad idea. We quickly realized we were being searched for and created a plan to escape. We both knew what was going on, and we both knew we narrowly escaped death at that time. Looking into the eyes of your apex predator is a feeling you'll never forget. We ended up going home, and I tried to lay down to forget it all, but I quickly realized I was not okay. When I closed my eyes, all I could see was its face staring back at me, the long white ashy snout with dark hollow eyes, and a piercing gray middle to them. It was tall and stood on both legs. It had a hunch and was terrifyingly skinny. It was hungry. My husband later mentioned he doesn't quite know why, but the reason he turned down that street in the first place was he felt called to go. I felt the same, and I know that had we stepped out of the car, had I not accidentally caught a glimpse into its eyes, we would be dead. So that brings me to now, this morning. I just woke up after being haunted in my dreams of his eyes and face, and I'm asking for help. My husband thinks I'm marked and that I can never return, but I don't know enough to fully understand what's happened to me. Thank you for reading, and please give me knowledge or advice on the situation. That's terrifying, and I don't have any knowledge or advice. Good God. The next one is called Weird High School Experience. This isn't a super unique or even that wild of an experience, but it's really stuck with me over the years as it was just unnerving. When I was around 15 or 16, my best friend at the time was having a sleepover at my place. Because it was in the basement and away from everyone else, the guest room was where we always had them. This is only relevant because I need to emphasize that the room was empty of any decorations, towels, clothes, etc. My mom is a neat freak and keeps the guest room spotless, almost like no one lives there. That night when my friend and I were going to bed, I saw what looked like a tall figure standing by the door. It totally freaked me out, but I just convinced myself it was a trick of the light. Nonetheless, I didn't want to say anything and freak my friend out, so I just scooted closer to them. About 10 seconds later, they got closer to me, practically cuddling. I was absolutely terrified, but this was comforting, and it wasn't super uncommon for us to cuddle. Still, while, though, I said nothing and eventually willed myself to sleep. When we woke up in the morning, the first words out of my friend's mouth were asking me if I had seen the guy standing by the door last night, too. Yuck. That's disgusting. The next story is called Me and My Sister's Paranormal Encounter. Hi guys, I'll start by prefacing that I'm quite a skeptical person and never really had an interest in the paranormal at all. This experience changed my skepticism, but I've not researched if what I experienced is common, if it has a name, or if there are any theories as to what it might have been. I would love to know your opinions. I'm going to try and be as detailed as I can and talk about some smaller surrounding events. Go down to the paragraph with main encounter for the main encounter if you don't want to read everything. We're gonna read everything. This experience happened back in 2014. A few small things happened before the encounter. I had a toy. The London 2012 one-eyed Olympic mascot that would play a song and dance when you pressed a button on its foot. On 2 occasions, this toy turned on by itself, both times in the middle of the night. It would sing, dance, and then stop abruptly. Ew. I never had one of those toys, which I have no idea what it is, but I had a Furby, and sometimes it would go off by itself in the middle of the night, and it scared the shit out of me. It would not complete the full dance cycle. I did a lot of research into this and convinced myself that it was caused by faulty batteries. Apparently that's a thing, so it very well may have. I don't know. Next, I was having a shower at home alone when the light turned off. The flip was psychically switched. I was the only one home. This could be just a bad switch. It's not really enough for me to consider paranormal, but worth mentioning in the context. Then things got a bit stranger. I woke up randomly in the middle of the night to see what seemed like a black, tall shadow, but standing up. Not like a shadow on the floor. It was facing me, but wasn't in my room. It was just outside the doorway in the corridor. As quick as I saw it, it had moved out of view. I immediately ran after it because I knew if I didn't confirm it wasn't a ghost, it would freak me out for weeks. Why would you do that? I was 13 or so back then. I got up and ran into the corridor and just about saw a black blur enter my parents' room via the half-open door. I ran in and nothing was there. I don't know if this one was a paranormal experience. The whole thing happened extremely fast and I had just woken up that very second. It was strange. But I have sleep paralysis like twice a week. Maybe this was a particularly strong case of it. That sucks, dude. Sleep paralysis is so scary. So the main experience, I'm 16 now, my sister is 18. It's a school morning and we were in the living room. There's a corridor that leads into the living room. We suddenly hear very loud running footsteps coming down the corridor towards the room that we are in. We can't see into the corridor, but we can see who pops out as they enter the living room, which is at the end of the corridor. We are weirded out by the sound since we are the only ones home. We both looked up to the entrance of the room in anticipation. The running gets closer and closer until finally in runs what I can only describe as an outline of a human, anthropomorphic shape, but blurry. The kind of blurry things are when in motion, which it was. It runs into the living room and right back down the same corridor. It barely stops and we hear clear as day the thunderous footsteps that seem to go on for longer than the length of our corridor. The entity itself was short, the height of a child, maybe 7 or 8. We only saw from the torso up, as between us was a sofa. It was wearing a bright orange plain t-shirt and its face was a Caucasian skin color. It seemed to have short black hair. It didn't have any facial features at all. That's not creepy. Maybe because it was moving quite fast and it blurred, but it seemed to be faceless. Ew. Me and my sister both heard and saw the exact same thing. What could it be? Something just want to share what my friend and I experienced in the autumn of 1987. I grew up in one of the northernmost states in New England, about 2 hours away from the White Mountains and 45 minutes from our state's meager coastline, in a small working-class city. General Electric and Tannery were two of the largest employers. I think it was early October. Leaves were starting to change, but still on the trees. Local fairs underway, and cool enough to rock my high school varsity jacket. I worked full-time and was saving up for my first car, a 76 two-door Chevy Nova, festooned with a Pink Floyd tapestry to cover the huge tear in the back seat. I just love the imagery. My friend Joe and I worked in the same restaurant, and an older cook would buy us hard-earned libations and give us a ride home. Really, he would drop us off at a cemetery that was the midway point between our two houses, and a great place for underage drinking. We were dropped off there with a 4-pack of Bartles and James wine coolers to split between us. It's an old, large cemetery with rolling hills, moss-covered headstones, and large maple trees. Ooh. I grew up playing hide-and-seek and having BB gun wars there. I even taught an army buddy how to drive stick in that cemetery. It was never a scary or haunted place to me, even after the weirdest experience of my young life took place there. There was a gazebo where we would sit and drink beers and wine coolers. It was open-aired with half walls and benches to sit on while we chatted and drank. All we had between us was that one 4-pack, so we were not drunk or under the influence of anything else. We began hearing footsteps coming in our direction. They sounded like someone walking in leaves. It later occurred to me that that was the first thing that was odd, as the leaves were still on the trees and the cemetery was well maintained. "Cops," Joe hissed, and I answered, "Kids." The footsteps came closer. We crouched below the half wall facing each other, the smiles on our faces growing more and more nervous until they disappeared altogether. The footsteps came at a measured pace. No other sound accompanied them. No jingling of keys, no fabric brushing against each other, and there was no beam of flashlight flitting about. The footsteps kept coming. I could see my mounting fear echoed in Joe's face. This person is a good storyteller. I appreciate that. Before we crouched down, we tried to see who was walking towards us and couldn't. But that was to be expected. It was a moonless night with little ambient light available. With our eyes wide and mouths agape, the footsteps came all the way up to the other side of that half wall and stopped. Joe visibly sagged, and I began to shake as neither one of us had the courage to look up at what had to be surely peering down on us. The footsteps began to recede, and we popped up immediately to see who it was. It was nobody. Literally nobody. We could see where the footsteps were coming from, but there wasn't anybody making them. It was dark, but it wasn't pitch black. We would have seen a person ducking behind tombstones. We followed the steps a little way down the hill until they stopped. We took that as our cue to leave. We both sprinted home. The next day at school, we allowed that it was weird, and that was that. We didn't tell anyone and went on with our lives. We weren't drunk or stoned, been diagnosed with schizophrenia, and our carbon monoxide detectors had fresh batteries. I have no explanation for this, and neither do you. The 80s were a magical time, and some days contained a little more magic than others. Thanks for reading this to the end. Thank you for telling this story. Well, that's all for now. I hope you guys are doing well and taking care of yourselves, and, all the things, all the good things. I'm really happy and looking forward to the next 2 days of this long weekend. If you do have a long weekend as well, I hope you enjoy it. And I will see you in the next video.